Hey class, in today's lesson, what we're hoping to do really is move off from doing the preliminary and planning graphics, that's your thumbnails and your working rough, and actually start doing the production kind of version of that, which would be your final piece of packaging, your promotional graphic, as it were. So, really, in terms of this lesson, there's some pretty straightforward aims. We want to use the DTP techniques that we've learned now. Obviously, this time it's not Zara, we're going to be using Gravit to do it. And we're going to use that to create a development of your packaging. So that's the outline of the unfolded box. And so if we've been successful with this, in this particular lesson, your aims are first of all to have created the packaging in proportion. So what's really important is that the different panels of the packaging are the appropriate sizes. So for example, the front and back would need to be the same size. The sides would need to be the right size to match how they meet the top and front and bottom and so on. So we're going to make sure that the net is in proportion. You should have shown the shape and position of any window or opening and any tabs for sticking it together, when you've actually finished making it, that's been printed out and cut out. And you could also define the color scheme for the kind of background panels. And the first two are the kind of definite things that we really do want to make sure we get done by the end of this lesson. But I'll cover the latter point about the color scheme because I think realistically it's quite straightforward to get that done in 50 minutes or thereabouts. So I'll give you a wee intro, and then I'm going to suggest that you just kind of watch a wee bit of the tutorial, pause to complete the steps, then watch the next bit and just kind of work your way through it. You should find it pretty straightforward. So as I say, we're going to create the surface development. We're going to make a color palette, which is going to have the different colors that we're going to use. We're going to think about the background colors and all the other stuff like the other elements, text, graphic elements, and so on. We'll deal with in later lessons. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to create a page that we can work on. So let's just kind of nick over to Gravity. This is kind of where we're going to end up today. That's a kind of a one we've already done. Now, as usual, if you go to Gravity, help if I spelled it right. There we go. Just go Gravit login. And when you get to this point, you've done it before, so you know what the deal is. Just sign in using your Google account. You don't need to accept the premium version. And when you get to this point, key thing that's always worth remembering is that go to print and then select your page size first. So make sure that you've got the right page size. And we're going to work in A3. Now, the next thing that we need to do is set the page rotation, the orientation, should I say, so that it's in landscape. Well, we don't need to. That depends on your design. If from doing your working rough, you're confident that your layout will be taller than it will be wide, you could leave the page set up in portrait, but with mine, I'm pretty confident that mine's actually a bit wider than it is tall. So if I go over to the sides here, and the page setup, there's a little option here to rotate canvas. So I want to do that first of all. The next thing I need to do to make life easier for myself, because remember we need to make each of the panels or sides of this package quite precisely sized so that when it folds up they all meet in the right place and all fits together. So to enable us to do that, we're going to use grid and snap to grid. So if we go up to the top here where it says view, and we go down to our canvas, we should be able to choose show grid. You'll see there's a shortcut there, Control Alt G. So we're going to turn that on. And over here, we've got a couple of wee settings that we might want to tweak. So the first one is the size of the grid. For some reason, the default size of the grid is really weird. It's 3.53 millimeters by 3.53. So that's a bit of an odd size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just change that to 5 by 5. And that means that the size of the actual squares in the grid are 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters now. Just seems a more sensible size. Now, in reality, had you done a drawn visual, you'd probably actually have sizes for all the different panels of your design. If you want to, I'll leave this up to your discretion, but if you want to, you could kind of sketch out on paper and kind of work out rough dimensions that you wanted the sizes for your box to be, or you can just do what I'm going to do and kind of estimate based on the kind of proportions from your working rough. So next thing we need is to refer back to our actual working rough. So I'm just going to use this example one that I had here on the page. The starting point really is to start by drawing whatever will be the front side of the box, so this panel here. So we want to draw a rectangle that's about that sort of proportion. So the first thing I need to do is go up here to Shapes or Rectangle, and then I'm just going to draw a rectangle. Don't worry about if you, try again, don't worry if you don't get it quite right first time, because you can adjust the size and shape your rectangle. I'm going to start by making it about that sort of size. We want to find a balance between using the space on the page effectively and not making it so big that it doesn't fit on. And we don't want it so small either that you can hardly see what's on it. So again, going back to here, proportions look pretty good for that. Now, to save myself a little bit of trouble, I'm going to duplicate panels after I've created a single one. So the next step here is to decide how big the bottom part is going to be, or the top part. So let's just say that's the front. Let's do the top first. Now, it's not super obvious from the working rough because it's not to scale, but the top panel is meant to be a little bit narrower, or it's not as long, you know, in a vertical direction. So on here, I'm going to do another box, and just to save myself some time, you can copy and paste that. So I'm just going to use Control C to copy and then Control V to paste. And you can't see anything because it's on top of it. We've now got a box there, and it just means it's the same size as the one I already had. And I'm going to make it a bit smaller, probably about that much smaller, about four blocks smaller. And what I'm going to do also is I'm going to select them both, so just drag a box over them. And over here, I'm going to go to where it says borders and just click plus to add a thin black border. By default, give me a thin black line. The reason I'm doing that is that I just want these to have an outline. And incidentally, if your box didn't have a fill color, I would start by just giving it a light gray fill if it doesn't have one already. Because again, if you're working with a white box and a white background, it gets hard to see. So you should have your boxes with a light colored fill, doesn't really matter what it is. So we're going to change it later anyway, and a faint outline. Now, having done that, okay, if I'm happy with that, provided I haven't made that so big that it takes up more than half the space, what I can do is I can just highlight that, Control C, Control V. So that's me copied and pasted that, just using the keyboard, and I've now got a second set of them. And that gets around me having to, when I draw the second box, count them out square by square to make sure they match, because the fact that I've copied and pasted means that I know they match. The next step is to add the side panels. So again, this kind of height here is dead easy to get, because when we draw the rectangle, it's obviously easy to make sure it's the same height as that. But we do need to make sure that it goes out in terms of the number of squares in this direction. We'll just hit save to clouds. That's fine. Just call it packaging example. Probably a timely interruption there. If you haven't saved yours, make sure you do so. So as I was saying, we've got try again. We have this panel, and we need to make sure that the size of it matches this one here. So what I'm going to do is simply count. Okay, so I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I want this one to go out 10 as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need to go another 3. So that's 8, 9, 10. Okay. And as before, I'm just going to give it a border. And that means that I can just take this panel here and I can copy and paste it by doing Control C, Control V on my keyboard and dragging the one that I pasted over here so that we've got that there. Okay, so at this stage, if you're needing to catch up and finish off adding your panels, just pause, go away and do so, come back when you're ready to move on. It shouldn't take terribly long. Now that you've hopefully got that done, and we're moving on to having a look at the next wee bit, which is we're going to make these wee flaps here. Now, there's actually not enough of the wee flaps on the working rough. We'd need some additional ones around these edges here. So I'm going to try and show you how we can do that quickly. If we go up to the pen tool here, okay, again, we'll zoom in a wee bit. I'm just going to click once to start a line, and then you just click again to place points, one click per point. And when I come back to the starting point here, that should be a solid shape, and I can just go down here, use the dropper tool, and pick up that color. Doesn't really matter because we're going to change the colors later anyway. And to save myself some time, because I need to add more of these on around these edges here and down at the bottom. So I'm going to just first of all copy and paste that. I'm going to drag it down at the bottom. and put it where it needs to be. And then up at the top, you'll see we've got these flip tools, so we'll just flip it. And then at the side here, we can just draw another one. So we've got one here, and we'll just give that. By the way, when I've finished using the drawing tool, I'm hitting the escape key on my keyboard to stop using the tool. So I just go back to the selector here. The shortcut for that is V though, if you want to use that. And then we're going to just give that a color. Oh, I meant to pick up the wee eyedropper. So we click the wee eyedropper icon and we can just steal a color. And we'll do another tab here. We only need to draw. There we go. We only need to draw one at the top and the bottom. I made a mistake here, but that's quite useful for me to show you how you change the shapes. If you've got a mistake with one of these shapes, to change it, you just double click on the shape and you get the wee handles will appear back up and you can grab them. So again, we'll just use the dropper. So I take that one, copy and paste, and guess where I'm going with this. Take it down to there, flip it, and then I'll grab all of these together. So holding the shift key, clicked on that, that, and that. Control C, Control V to copy and paste. And we're going to drag it over here, and we're going to flip it. I need to move it a little bit further because it's not quite lined up. There we go. So, I mean, you can do them all individually if you find it easier, but I just find it a lot quicker to do copy and paste and flip. It saves you a bit of time. So at this stage, we've created the boxes and we've created the flaps that we need to use. So really, there's not a huge amount left to do. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add the window, wherever that's going to be. So on here, if I look back at my working rough, mine has a window kind of to the top right-ish area. So we're going to go here, get the rectangle tool. I'm going to say probably start at about here. Yeah, probably about 2 in. Try again, can't seem to get that start. There we go. Click and drag, that's why it wasn't working. Okay, so we'll go probably about that far. Let's have a look. Yeah, that looks about right. Maybe a little bit taller. Maybe one step longer. But I'm happy with that. So a couple of things to bear in mind with your shape here. What we want to do here is rather than having that like as another box on top of a box, we actually want to take that box and cut it out of the background. So to do that, we're going to have that selected, which we already do, and then we're going to hold the shift key to select the box behind it. So we've now got them both together, and we're going to go right click and create a compound. And a compound allows us to take different shapes and join them or subtract them for each other, do various other things. So I'm going to click create compound. It appears to have disappeared here, but if I look over at the side here, appearance compound, this option has appeared. And you'll see that one of the options is subtract. And when I do that, that's now basically taken that rectangle and it's cut it out of the shape that I had. So if I was to put something in there behind there, you'll be able to see what I mean. It's not like it's a white rectangle on top of something else. So if I just take that and I grab it over here and I send it to back, there we go. We can see that that's, I don't drag the whole thing. Oh. That was silly of me. I think I've put it in an awkward place, but you get the idea. Anyway, that's now basically a clear window. There's nothing behind it. So at this stage, we've got the net, it's all in proportion. We've got the flaps, we've got the window, and if you had windows on the other parts of your box, you can add them too. The last thing to do is a color swatch and the color fill. So if you need a wee second to catch up and finish off the actual, this part of the box here, by all means take a little bit of time to do that. If you're ready to move on though, we will do so now. So the color swatch is really just, let me explain, I guess, why we would do it. When we are, I guess, defining the colors of different parts of our design, it can be a lot easier to use the little eyedropper tool that you have here, where we can just use that to pick a color from somewhere on the page. And if we're trying to reuse the same green or the same whatever it might happen to be several times over and over again, rather than having to individually go and try and match the colour manually each time, it's easier just to have some little samples down the side of our colour scheme that we can use with the eyedropper. So to start with, basically, I'm going to make a couple of little squares. So I've just copied and pasted that by pressing Control C and then pressing Control V twice. So I've copied and pasted that 3 times. And in each one of these, I'm going to now go to the fills and I'm going to choose one of the colours. So in this, I know I'm going to need a kind of lightish green, a darker green for these outlines, and then a kind of purpley, kind of pinky colour. So first one we'll go with is the dark green. So we go over here to the fill. I'm going to drag the hue slider along here to somewhere in the green range. And we want to get that kind of dark green first of all. So I'll probably choose somewhere around about, I don't want it too dark. There we go, that'll probably do. And then our next one, same again. Color slider into our greens, and this time we're going to try and get a kind of lighter green. And maybe make it slightly yellowier kind of green. There we go, that'll probably be okay. We can tweak them later if we're not happy. And then this one here, we're going to drag the slider along to that kind of pinky, kind of purpley colour. Yeah, somewhere around about there. Maybe a little bit less intense. Yeah, that's fine. For the sake of what we're doing, it's fine. So we've now got our colour palette that we're going to apply to these surfaces. And incidentally, don't worry about the fact that there's all these black lines, because we can get rid of them really quickly by highlighting the whole thing. And then over here at the side where you see it says borders, you can see that there's a little visibility option. We can uncheck that, so we can, we can remove the outlines dead easily. So first of all, I'm going to look at my working rough and I'm going to decide on my base colours. Now these panels here have a stripe through them, which will be added as a separate graphic, just as a shape on top of that of a different colour. So their base colour is the background. So that's green, green, the purpley colour, and this one's purpley colour as well. And then these two are going to be using a fade that's primarily purple. So I'm going to start by filling all these with the kind of purpley colour. So I'm going to select that. Incidentally, it's a good idea to get the tabs and make them the same color as whichever panel it's adjacent to, so that if you see the edge of the tab where it folds over and joins, you don't have like a weird colored line. So we're going to go into there, we've got them all selected, then we're going to hit the wee color picker tool, and we're going to go over here and just click on that color there. So that sets my color for all of these panels. And then the sides, again, I want to get them and their tabs that kind of greeny color, and it's the lighter green. So I'm going to just use the Shift key to select multiple items. And again, color picker, and that's us. So we've set our kind of base colors there. And the next thing we need to do is, if we've got any fades or anything kind of interesting like that going on, don't worry about, by the way, any patterns. Like if you're going to add little icons or symbols, like these little circle bubble sort of things, you'll do them later. So for now, we just want to add these fades. So here we want a fade that goes from green to this kind of purple to green, sort of diagonally. So we're going to click on this panel by itself. We don't want to have anything else selected. And then in here, where we click on the color, and we get this little menu popping up, we want to change the color fill to a linear gradient. You'll see by default, it's just a straight line from left to right. So there's a few things that we need to do. The first thing we need to do is we need to change it so it goes diagonally, which is kind of what the intention was here. And we want it to change through several colors. So we want it to start this kind of pinky color, and we want it to end that color, but we want it in the middle to be a green. So if I click on the line here, or I go up here and click there, it doesn't really matter where I do it, I can choose another point and I can define a color. So with this color or this point here selected, I can use the color picker tool, go over and just steal my green color. And then with this point at the end here, the one for the far end, like here, we want to make that the purpley color as well. Now, incidentally, you'll see that it's like the purple is just at the very edge here. So if we drag where that ends further in, we'll see that we can bring where the purpley pink color starts and ends a little bit further in. Likewise here, we can kind of drag that in and out a little bit to to control really where it starts and ends. And likewise, we can drag that area back and forth a little. Now, I kind of felt like that bit in the middle wasn't wide enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click again, going to create a second point here. And I'm just going to make that green as well. So that it's going between 2 points where it's green. So I can choose where the green starts and ends more easily now because it's not just a single point. Okay. Now, it probably won't look exactly as you had it on paper. And do feel free at this stage to use a bit of artistic license. If you're not happy with how it looked here, play around with it a little bit here. Find whatever you think works best for you. I think actually, on retrospect, I've got it back to front. The colours are the wrong way around. But for the sake of keeping things moving, I'll not go back and fix that. I just wasn't really paying attention, to be honest. You can see it goes green, purple, green, and I've made it purple, green, purple, but like I say, it'll not matter. Now down here, we've got another fade, so just click on the panel, same again. We want to make sure we've got that panel selected there. You sometimes have to click off here to just deselect everything before you go to change anything, because it was hanging on to the selection of this panel. And in here, we're just going to go in and you can choose the fill. There's a whole range of them, right? So I'd used a linear gradient last time, but you can use a radial gradient. So if you wanted it to be one color in the middle and another on the outside. So for example, say I decided that I actually wanted it to be green around the outside instead of just at the bottom. I can go and do that. So I'm selecting this outer point here, and then using the color picker, picking the color I want. And then in here, we've got some other options about where the center is going to be. So I can move that around. I can also move these positions. So you've got quite a lot of options in terms of what you can do with that particular fill. You can play around with how it actually inhabits the space that you place it in. So that's really it. I mean, at this stage, if you've got all your panels and you've got your colors and you're quite happy with the basic fills, we're done for today. The next lesson we'll be moving on to adding these other graphics, like your text and any kind of banners, like these little patterns in the background. We'll kind of break all that down separately. But for now, you've got the kind of fundamentals done. Just make sure that you have definitely saved it. So click the wee save button up here, or go to File, Save to Cloud if you need to. You're generally better saving it to the cloud because then you'll not lose it. And we'll pick that up in our next lesson, where we'll, as I say, come back to a couple of these other details. But hopefully that was straightforward. If you've got any questions, let us know. We'll be happy to help.